Russian Z-War correspondent Timofey Yermakov publicly admitted that the goals of the so-called special military operation have completely failed. Instead of the promised demilitarization, Ukraine has turned into a super-militarized state. We failed to achieve the goals of the SVO. We militarized Ukraine like no other country. I don't know of a more militarized country, Yermakov said. Putin promised to weaken Ukraine, but achieved the opposite. Ukraine became stronger, more armed, and more decisive. Over the years of war, the Ukrainian Armed Forces have become one of the most powerful armies in Europe, armed with modern systems and ready for offensive actions. Now Ukraine is not just a neighbor, but a strong, armed enemy on Russia's borders. Putin's mistake has created a problem that will have to be reckoned with for many years to come. Ukraine is no longer afraid of Russian aggression and is ready to defend and counterattack. The confession of the Russian war correspondent shows that even in Russia they are beginning to understand how Putin's mistake led to the emergence of a strong enemy. Zelenski himself commented on this. They understand that Putin is doing complete nonsense and is getting the opposite effect. But they still support this stupid slaughter, even understanding that it only brings harm. Amazingly, thick-headed cretins, of course. In this case, the meeting between the Ukrainian and Russian delegations in Istanbul clearly showed he isn't yet ready to do a deal. The Wall Street Journal reports, "We fought Sweden for 21 years. How long are you ready to fight?" That was the message delivered by Russian presidential aide Vladimir Medinsky to the Ukrainian delegation during recent peace talks in Istanbul. Another statement attributed to him warned, "Maybe some of those sitting here at this table will lose more of their loved ones. Russia is prepared to fight forever." Russia insisted it would only consider a ceasefire if Ukraine withdrew from all 4 regions Russia claims to have annexed: Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, despite not fully controlling them. Ukrainian diplomatic sources said Russia also threatened to seize Kharkiv and Sumy, expanding its territorial demands. Putin has signaled that his demands haven't changed since the beginning of the war, the report says. For US President Donald Trump, who is promoting the idea of a quick peace, the events in Istanbul show that the roadblock to peace is Putin, just as the Ukrainians and their European backers claim.
Former President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with prostate cancer, his office said Sunday. According to Associated Press, Biden was seen last week by doctors after urinary symptoms and a prostate nodule was found. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer on Friday, with the cancer cells having spread to the bone. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone-sensitive, which allows for effective management, his office said. The president and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians. Prostate cancers are given a score called a Gleason score that measures, on a scale of 1 to 10, how the cancerous cells look compared with normal cells. Biden's office said his score was 9, suggesting his cancer is among the most aggressive. When prostate cancer spreads to other parts of the body, it often spreads to the bones. Metastasized cancer is much harder to treat than localized cancer because it can be hard for drugs to reach all the tumors and completely root out the disease. However, when prostate cancers need hormones to grow, as in Biden's case, they can be susceptible to treatment that deprives the tumors of hormones. The health of Biden, 82, was a dominant concern among voters during his time as president. After a calamitous debate performance in June while seeking re-election, Biden abandoned his bid for a second term. Then Vice President Kamala Harris became the nominee and lost to Republican Donald Trump, who returned to the White House after a 4-year hiatus. But in recent days, Biden rejected concerns about his age despite reporting in the new book, Original Sin, by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson that AIDS had shielded the public from the extent of his decline while serving as president. In February 2023, Biden had a skin lesion removed from his chest that was a basal cell carcinoma, a common form of skin cancer. And in November 2021, he had a polyp removed from his colon that was a benign, but potentially precancerous lesion. In 2022, Biden made a cancer moonshot one of his administration's priorities with the goal of having the cancer death rate over the next 25 years. The initiative was a continuation of his work as vice president to address a disease that had killed his older son, Bo.
Vladimir Putin did not travel to Istanbul to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky for the peace talks. The British Mirror reports one reason. They claim that Putin has an obsession that prevents him from leaving not only Russia but even the Kremlin. Russian dictator has tightened his security and rarely leaves his Kremlin security bubble out of fear of a Ukrainian kill squad, anti-Kremlin plotters or killers from within his inner circle. Recall, Vladimir Putin even has led Russia's Victory Day commemorations with a parade in Red Square and heightened security. Heavy security and restrictions were in place in the center of Moscow. The security of Russian President Vladimir Putin is always being bolstered regardless of assassination attempts on other leaders, and everything necessary is being done to ensure it, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told earlier. Former commander of the UK's Joint Chemical, Biological, Radiological and Nuclear Regiment, Colonel Hamish de Breton-Gordon, told that Putin is now a dead man walking, a spent force whose war in Ukraine will cause his end. Things are looking very bad in Russia, as even the US now seems to be looking at conciliation with Ukraine as Trump is realizing he has been played by Putin. He said to the Mirror, Putin cannot keep playing for time, and his bluff has been called brilliantly by Zelensky's challenge to meet him face-to-face in Turkey. Russia in the coming months will lose a third of its income through decreased oil prices, and it has lost probably 1 million troops to the conflict. He is incredibly paranoid, as we see with his increased security, and I am very reliably informed by people who would know that he has at least 2 doppelgangers or lookalikes. He has been acting like a worried Tsar, and the Bolsheviks are gathering at the gates because internally things are looking really terrible. Russians cannot even buy a loaf of bread, said Breton-Gordon. Things never end democratically in Russia, and the situation is bad for Putin. He has had people killed for years, and some in his military have already been dealt with in such a way. He knows the way this goes for a leader in Moscow who is not making good decisions, so he is probably right to be paranoid. Bruce Jones, one of the UK's leading analysts in Russian intelligence and the military, said. Colonel Richard Kemp, former commander of UK forces in Afghanistan, added, there are plenty of people who would want to have Putin bumped off, but his security is so tight that there is a real question over whether that is at all achievable, and I believe that for the moment it is unlikely to happen.